2, 3. And Angourie, you'll get to be in this one too. All right, ready? 1, 2, please. Excellent. All right. Now business is done and we can start. I love that there's one seat here in the front, so we can direct ourselves to that. So it's really exciting to be here, and it's really exciting to be here with Angourie, and to talk about Every Day, a book that I wrote and a movie that Angourie starred in. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk amongst ourselves for a little bit, ask a few questions, give a few answers, then open it up to you guys, and then that'll be that, and we'll sign some books. The movie opens on Friday. Isn't that crazy? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's disappointing for me though because it opens in Australia in April. So all of my friends are like seeing all this press and publicity and they're so excited, but they have to wait like an extra month. But lucky for you guys, you live in the US, so yeah, you can see it on Friday, which is very exciting. Yeah.
Although I found out from another friend on Facebook that it's opening in the Netherlands on Thursday, so they're actually getting it first, which I just don't know how that happened.
How dare they?
And why are we here? Why are we not in Amsterdam?
I know, I'd love to be in Amsterdam. That's cool.
All right, so for those of you unfamiliar, and I'm guessing most of you are familiar, but we're just going to go with it and say for those of you not familiar, this is not a spoiler, it's in the trailer. The premise of Every Day is that it is about a character named A who wakes up in a different body every day and falls in love with a girl named Rhiannon, who is played by Angourie in the movie. And so now we have the premise. So what this means is that in the movie, you are the through line. All of these different actors, 16 total, play A, and you are you. Yeah. So what was it like to be playing against one character played by 16 different actors?
It's bizarre. I mean, you know, usually on a film you'll have your buddy who's like your co-star throughout the whole film and you're in every scene together. But, you know, with this, as you said, it's 16 different people, which is very unusual. But, I mean, it was really fun. It's such a unique experience. I'm so grateful that I had that experience. I mean, it's so cool. And everyone who played A was just incredibly professional and welcoming and kind and very talented as well. And also in the casting, I think everyone who played A had a very special quality about them that made them similar to the character. So I think that's how they maintained the sort of continuity of the character. But, you know, for me on a personal level, it was so exciting to just meet so many people and make friends from all over the US and Canada. So yeah, I loved it.
It was very funny because last week there was a screening in LA with many of the actors there, and so many of them had never met each other before because, again, you were the constant. You had known all of them, and it was fun to see you sort of shepherding them around and introducing them to each other.
It was bizarre, yeah, because I knew all of them, but they didn't know each other. Right. And yeah, it was cool that they all got to meet.
So how do you sort of establish an intimacy with somebody so quickly when they come to the set, you're introduced, and then suddenly you're in the middle of a scene? How did you jump into that?
It's difficult. The first day I met Justice, who plays Justin. He's fantastic, such a great actor. He came up to me and he said, "I have to give you a hug because, you know, we have to pretend like we've been dating for a year. So let me just give you a hug." So that that was good to sort of get into it. And he was so lovely. But yeah, it's strange to sort of jump into that immediately. But everyone was like very professional and like knew what they were doing, which was great. And also the director, Michael, had sent out a letter or an email to everyone saying, you know, read the script as if you are playing every single A, which I think was really valuable because every person who played A knew exactly what had happened previously and what was going to happen. So yeah, that made it easier, I guess.
All right, and so you first encountered the story from the novel, not from the screenplay. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that, about sort of being sent a script and then saying, oh wait, I know this story?
Yeah, it was great. When I audition for things, usually they'll send the script through and I won't read it straight away. My mum reads it for me and she gives me a rundown. But I read the script of Every Day because I had already read the book and I was really excited to see how they had adapted it. And yeah, my first question was, okay, well, how are they going to do this? How are they going to create, a character that embodies 16 different people? So I was really excited to be a part of it, and I really loved the book. I'm not just saying that because you're
I can
here.
leave the room and yeah.
I really loved it. I read it so quickly. Sorry. I read it in like 3 days. I thought it was so interesting. It did scare me a bit, though, I must admit, because it scared me because it could be real. I mean, I love all those theories. I love all of that. So it did scare me because it could be real, but that's one reason why I was really excited to sort of be a part of it. Yeah.
All right, and then another question I asked you in LA, but as I told you, we had a screening in Denver, and everybody loved the movie. And then when I told them that you were Australian, they actually called me a liar. They no, there's no way that she could possibly that has to be the way she talks. And I was like, no, I've talked to her. That's not. So I'm really curious about embodying an American teenager. I mean, when I met you on the set, we were wandering around a high school in Canada together. Very much it felt like we are in like generic central casting American high school. So what was it like to sort of embody that?
It was really fun because I got to go to like an American house party, and that was really cool. And for those of you who will watch the film or have read the book, there's a party scene at Steve's house, and it's like a big thing in the book. And so, that was of course in the film, and that was really exciting because we had like these red cups that you see in the movies, but we don't have them in Australia, so it was so exciting to see like these red cups. I loved it. And that was probably the most exciting thing for me. And also just like the American lockers, like, it's just like such an American thing. And, all the, like the cafeteria, like we call it the canteen, and you don't have like a set lunch. You don't have a tray or anything. Like I got to hold the tray, and that was, it was just so exciting for me, to experience the life of an American teenager. Yeah, it was fun.
I'm just imagining you kind of going back home with like your suitcase full of red cups, being like, I brought back souvenirs. Let's all try this sometime. All right, do you have questions for me?
I do. I asked you this in LA, but I do want to know more about how you felt about it being turned into a film. Like, it's a huge thing. Was there any point where you kind of thought, oh no, I don't want it to be turned into a film, or I don't know how I feel about this? How did you feel about the whole process, I guess?
I mean, I think that the first conversation I had was with Christian, one of the producers, and before they had bought it, and I said to him, the one condition I have, because I know that once you sell it, that's the last time you have any control over anything. Yeah. But I said, I want you to promise that you will cast a different actor as A. Every day, and that I, with all due respect to Quantum Leap, sort of that kind of body hopping where it's like one character, usually a white guy, looking in the mirror and being like, oh, I'm an Asian girl today. Oh, look, I'm a black boy today. Like, I did not want that, and he laughed, and he's like, believe me, if we wanted to do that, we wouldn't be making the movie. Like, it's. I feel very strongly about this too, and that definitely led to the comfort level. But then the question just became, okay, now that we've set this condition, can they actually pull it off? And on the set, talking to everybody, it was this huge leap of faith. Nobody knew for sure whether it was going to be. I'm sure you didn't either. And then when I saw the rough cut, I was like, oh my God, they've actually pulled it off. I can't believe this. I love this. So I think that was important. And then again, I had trust completely in Jesse, the screenwriter, and then Michael when he came on board, about making sure that it was inclusive, making sure that they cast widely, and that they didn't try to sort of get rid of or diminish the themes of the book. If anything, I think they've amplified them beautifully. So again, I've been very, very happy with how it's all turned out. But it was something people keep telling me, like, oh, well, it was your most successful solo book. Obviously, it would become a movie. And I was like, no, there's nothing about this book that's actually obvious to be made into a movie, because again, it's Rhiannon becomes the star of the movie because everybody else is changing so much. And they're like, oh, okay, and did you like it? I'm like, yeah, I really did. So that's always good.
Thank God.
Yeah.
And is there anything in the book that you wish had made it into the film, or vice versa, anything in the film that you wish you had written in the book originally?
I mean, the amazing thing, and after I saw you in LA, I hung out with Jesse, the screenwriter, in San Francisco, and he kept saying, "No, no, you're kidding me, right?" Because I kept saying that if I had listed the 10 days of A's that I would want most in the movie, all 10 made it into the movie. That it makes sense, and of course, again, Jesse was like, "Well, what about this day? What about that?" And I'm like, "No, but that doesn't make sense." It was very weird. It was like we were switching roles because he was like, "No, you must find fault in my work." I was like, "No, I will not find fault in your work." But really and truly, I mean, I know, and Michael referenced this when we did a talk back in LA, that the scenes with the suicidal girl were at one point out of the script and then put back in. And if that had not been in there, I don't think I would like it nearly as much. I think that's such the heart of it, and so I'm glad that came back in. But yeah, so that, again, it's not, I didn't watch the movie thinking, oh, I wish that scene had been in or that scene had been in. Everything pretty much seems of a piece, which is pretty much nothing short of a miracle. Like I'm not, again, you are not being polite with me, I'm not being polite with you in that I truly, if there was something, I would say it, but really there isn't anything in there. To the second part, I mean, the more I see the movie, and I've seen the movie 5 times now, there are, you know, right? It's going to be like 10 in a week. Oh, I'm not in it, so I don't have to get self-conscious when I look at it. Yeah, that's a very different thing.
I've seen it once, and like I'm struggling. I'm seeing it again tomorrow night.
Right.
I don't know how I'm gonna do it. Sorry, keep going.
It's all right. We'll talk about that next. Yeah. No. But it's really interesting because I really see why every single choice that was made that's different from the book was made. Mm-hmm. And there are some things. It is not a spoiler at all, I don't think. But the one thing that I love that the movie does is brings Alexander in earlier, because in the book he just sort of appears at the end, and I'm very happy with the book, but it actually makes much more sense if it is somebody who Rhiannon has known all along and who has sort of crushed on her all along. So that was a change that most of the changes, if I could go back and change the book, I wouldn't, but that one I totally would in a second. Like, I think it makes much more sense.
Oh, cool. And for you, like, what was the hardest part about writing this book in the first place? Did you come to a challenge where you thought, oh my God, I'm just going to abandon this book, I don't want to write it anymore?
I mean, I think there were 2 big challenges. I mean, the first was, spoiler, it's not autobiographical. There was no great wealth of experience that I could tap in, although there was, at one, I don't know if it was a New York reading or not. Man, some people might have been in the audience. There was one man at a Q&A at a reading who asked me, "Is this autobiographical?" And I was like, no, it's not. Next question? Right.
How do we
Right.
know, right?
I seem to always show up with this body, but yes, maybe one day. Ask me what I did 3 Wednesdays ago, and I'll be like, maybe I wasn't in my body. But just that notion of sort of creating somebody who wasn't defined by their body. And that was something that, even in the editing process, my editor, Nancy, was very, very critical about any moment where it felt like A teetered into one identity over another, whether it's male or female, whether it was a race, whether something, because again, A really had to not have any of those things. Mm-hmm. And creating a character like that is really hard. And also, in embodying the different character every day, usually as a writer, when you have different characters, you're trying to make them sound very different. But in this case, because it was the same person in all of them, they had to live different lives but still sound like the same person, and that was hard. Yeah. And then the other part was, it wasn't until about 3/4 of the way through that I knew how I was going to end the book. So like about halfway through, it was like, oh, that's funny. You don't know what the ending is. You don't know where you're writing. And then about 2/3, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do here. And again, without giving the ending away, I will just say the options. Part of me was like, but they have to end up together. And then part of me was like, but they can't end up together. And so basically that angel and the devil, and you can decide which one was which, were like wrestling in my head for a very long time. And it wasn't until that wrestling match had been resolved that I was like, okay, I know how to do it. Yeah. All right, so going back to seeing yourself on the big screen.
Oh my God, yeah.
That you are in this movie a lot.
Yeah, too much.
So what is that like? I mean, so just as I sort of can revise my book while I'm watching the movie,
Yes.
are there things that you saw that you were like, oh, I would do this differently, or?
Yes, yes, so much of it, so much of it. Yeah, it's bizarre seeing myself on screen, especially with a different accent and with different hair. Because they actually gave me extensions for the role, and everyone thought it was my real hair. They were like so shocked. They were like, "Can I feel it? Can I touch it?" But yeah, it's really weird seeing myself on screen. But most of the film, well, not most, I'd say 50% of the film, I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? I should have done something completely different there. But actually, my favorite part to watch of the film, which is rare because usually I hate watching the films that I'm in, but my favorite part to watch was actually the party scene, especially the dancing. Because that was so much fun to film, and just seeing it on screen was like so great. And Lucas, who plays Nathan, he was just fantastic at dancing, and yeah, that was definitely my favorite part.
Awesome. All right. I think I'm going to open it up to questions now. I have more, and you have more, but we trust this audience to be.
Oh my God, do we?
I mean, somewhat. I think so. I think so. I mean, at least the ones I know. The ones I don't know, I can't really vouch for. Of course, I'm saying that, and now no one's going to raise their hands. Let's see. All right. There we go.
Apologies, but this is more of a question for David. You've been through the book to movie process a few times, and not to be mean to anyone in the room, but do you have a favorite movie adaptation of one of your books? Also, is Will Grayson coming to movie theaters soon?
So I've been getting this question a lot in interviews, which I just think is rude. No, but I mean, and you can love all of your children. Yeah, I know, right? It's another conversation, right? But no, I think I genuinely, I mean, I love Nick and Nora. It was the first, and it was shot here, and I was there a lot, so I have a very sentimental attachment to it. But in terms of ambition, I mean, Nick and Nora, it's a guy and a girl, some friends in a car, talking a lot, and going around New York City. So they did it brilliantly, but it isn't as ambitious thematically. So I will actually go with Every Day, because I think what is astonishing to me is not just that it is such a good movie, and it really is. Genuinely, again, the fact that I've seen it 5 times and I still love it is a small miracle, because I should probably turn it against it at some point, but not quite yet. But it is, what is meaningful to me is that all of the themes are there. Everything that made the book special to write and hopefully special to read are right there on the screen. And again, there was nothing straightforward about doing that. So the fact that they could pull it off is much more of an achievement. And so I admire that more. Again, it's not that I don't love the other 2 movies at all. I do. But again, as far as what it was aiming for and what it achieved, it probably is the top of that. And then Will Grayson, do you happen to be a producer with lots of money? If so, yeah, please. If so, let's talk. That would be great. I would love to see that.
How did you come up with the concept?
How did I come up with the concept? So basically, walking to work one day, I thought, what would it be like to wake up in a different body? What I was thinking of my own body at the time, I know, right? Who knows? The mind works in mysterious ways, especially before it gets coffee in the morning. And so it was just that premise. And I thought, well, this has probably been done millions of times before in YA, and it happened to not have been. And then I never plot out my books, so luckily I was totally ignorant as far as all of the themes that I would be opening up with this very simple premise. So it was only as I started writing that I was like, oh, I'm writing about a character who does not have a set gender or race or parents or DNA or anything like that. And also, I'm writing this love story where the character does actually change bodies every day and have to explore what that would mean for a relationship. So I just dug right into it. I did not outline it at all. Basically, whatever body I thought of when I was starting a chapter, that became who A was. And so it was interesting. Again, one of the crazy things about seeing a movie is that you are like, wow, I just just one whatever day sitting in my apartment typing away was like, oh, I think it's going to be this kid Nathan, and he's going to have these crazy religious parents, and he's going to go to this party. And then suddenly I'm watching this party scene where everybody is embodying this thing that I spontaneously thought up. So that's pretty cool. And again, it worked to be very freeform until I had to come up with an ending. Then I really needed to think about it.
It's just spectacular that you can write a whole amazing novel about a thought that popped into your head walking to work. Because honestly, if I wrote a novel about a thought that popped into my head, like walking to school, it would be the dullest book ever written. So honestly, like, that's amazing.
Well, I mean, I'm very selective. That there would be like a 9-part series called "I Really Need Coffee" if I went with like every thought that was in the morning. So every now and then I have one that's so strange that I have to go with it. And it was interesting because, not to bring everything back to Australia, but it's really funny because I had the thought and then sort of just put it away. And then when I finished my book, The Lover's Dictionary, which is the only book I've written about grown-ups, I was actually going on tour and did like the Sydney Writers' Festival and did Reading Matters in Melbourne. And it was while I was there, I decided to do something that I suggest all writers do because I genuinely didn't know what to write next. And I went to the park that's sort of at the basis, basically on the Circular Quay, right? In Sydney. And I just sat down there for 3 hours and in a notebook wrote every single idea that I had been keeping in my head. And just like random ones, really bad ones like, boy who really needs coffee every morning. But then one of them was wakes up every morning in a different body. And as soon as I wrote that, I was like, oh, wait, that one, huh? And it was that afternoon, after 3 hours of looking at the list, I decided that would be the next book to write. And I started very shortly after.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So it started in Sydney.
It did.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Unfortunately, it did not. My favorite, can I share my favorite Melbourne story? Because it involves writing Another Day, which is Rhiannon's story.
Yes.
So my favorite Melbourne story ever is I always stay at the Hotel Lindrum, which is down by, is it Flinders Square? Is the square downtown?
Flinders Street Station.
Yeah. So, and it's very important to know that I live across the river in New Jersey in a town called Hoboken. So I got in late at night. I was working on a chapter, and I was like, I'm going to go find a coffee shop. And so I wandered and was like, whatever the first coffee shop I find, I'll go for. And I remembered one of the alleys by the hotel had all the graffiti, which I love taking pictures of. And I was halfway down the alley when I saw a sign. I was like, that can't possibly say what I think it does. And it ended up being that they had just opened a Cafe Hoboken, themed after the town in New Jersey. In Melbourne, Australia. I was like, this is the strangest thing that has ever happened to me. I was like, am I jet lagged? Is this really happening? The poor people inside, I walked in, I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm from Hoboken. Why is this cafe called Hoboken? Cafe Hoboken. And the barista, of course, had no idea. We got the manager, and the manager was like, oh, the person who owns it, like, when he went to New York, he stayed in Hoboken for like 2 nights. And was like, oh, that'll be cool. But it was like, they had decorated it with like bus schedules that weren't really New York bus schedules or New Jersey bus schedules. So I immediately was like, I will sit down here and write. And I actually wrote a chapter of Another Day while I was there.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually live very close to a place called New York Minute Burger, which is like a chain in Melbourne or in Australia that serves like New York style burgers, and it has like maps of New York, and yeah, it's all New York themed. And it's funny because there are no Melbourne themed restaurants here.
I mean, no, they're really the Melbourne Minute Burger. Maybe that can be how we make our million here. All right, I've digressed, but that's okay. No? Other questions? Yes.
So you were talking about that like the devil angel conversation in your head about the ending.
Yes.
And this is probably like hard to answer without like spoiling.
Okay.
But how did you decide for the ending?
All right, so the question was, how did I decide on the ending when the devil and the angel were wrestling? And is it possible to answer this question without giving away the ending of both the book and the movie? The most readily available answer is I really love your socks, which really isn't really the best answer. I mean, aren't those great socks?
yeah,
I mean,
I've
they're
been
really
admiring
great. Yeah,
them.
no,
They're
it's
really
really. I've
cool.
been facing this way, so I haven't seen them. I was like, whoa, awesome socks. No, it's very, very interesting because the key to writing Every Day and Another Day and the sequel Someday, which is coming in October, to me has always been that I'm writing a book with a paranormal conceit, but I'm writing it as realism. So it has to feel real. So again, as the angel and the devil were wrestling, it really was, okay, what ending will feel most real to me? And again, I went with the one that felt most real. That said, having just said it, the fact that I did write a sequel obviously means that I wasn't entirely happy with the ending and felt that there was more that could be done. And it's very interesting because I'm extraordinarily glad that there were 6 years between me writing the first book and writing the proper sequel, and I'm very glad that Another Day was right in between. Because if you had asked me right after I finished Every Day, is it complete? Is this exactly where you wanted to end up? The answer was yes. And it was only over time and thinking about it and thinking about where I had put the characters that I was like, actually, no, there's more to be said. So I wrote another one. And hopefully, I mean, right now I feel that the ending of that one is very, I'm very happy with where it is. 6 years from now, we may be back here.
And when's that book coming out?
It is October 2nd.
Not October 3rd.
That was actually my birthday.
There we go. So happy birthday. With love from Random House.
Any other questions?
Yes.
So I have a question for both of you. I'd be really interested to hear kind of both of your takes on this. So A is a character that has an identity and a personality, but none of the things that the rest of us use to cultivate that. No family, no race, no gender. So I'm wondering, in both the writing process and the filming process, when A started to feel like a person. Like there were things A would say and things A wouldn't say. When did that happen for each of you?
I mean, I have the easier one. No, because I was starting from the interior out in writing the novel. So, I mean, if you look at the pie chart of how much time I spend on a book, easily 2/3 of the pie are spent on the first 3 chapters because I will write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite them until I feel I have the voice right. And for A, that was really, really important to do. That I got to know A by using A's voice and trying to see through A's eyes. So I think that's where A really became apparent to me. And if anything, again, it was the harder part of trying to balance A being in a different body while still thinking so much of A just as A's own entity. That was what's so crazy about the movie, is that the book, obviously, there is no physical dimension to it. So it's very easy to just say, I woke up, today I am Nathan. I woke up, today I'm Ashley. It is so much harder, but also in many ways so much more gratifying to actually see it physically manifest, and that's what the movie had to do.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting experience for everyone involved, like not only the actors and the creative team, but also the crew. But I think the first moment for me was actually, we did a whole sort of cast read-through. We didn't have all the A's there because they were from the US and from Canada, but we did have, quite a few actors there, and I think the script is where we really found A's voice, and that's where I think Michael, the director, found A's voice, and that's when it sort of, I think it's all in the script, and you're really lucky when it's all in the script, and you have such great material to work from. So I think that's where it started for all the actors.
All right, before I ask the natural follow question, how many of you have read the book or are familiar with the story? Okay, then I can ask it. So we'll see you also get to embody A at one point. Mm-hmm. So what was it like to be playing basically 2 roles in a movie, and how did you delineate your day as A, as Rhiannon, from your days as Rhiannon?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because we don't shoot in order. So we started off, we do it according to location. So we started off with Rhiannon's house. So there was some A material there, and then we ended with the school stuff. So I played A at the very end of the shooting. So as well. So it was sort of very broken up and disjointed. But the director Michael had like such a clear vision of how important this, I guess, sequence was in the story. And I think it was really due to him that we were able to sort of differentiate between Rhiannon and A. And it was really exciting for me as an actor because, that hardly ever happens, that you get to play two different people who live in the same world of film. So it was really exciting for me. And I hope that it translates enough on screen that you can see the difference between the two characters. So yeah.
I mean, I think it does. I mean, you
Well,
seem
you
to be
have to say
having
that.
no. You seem to be having so much fun when you're A. Like it's
Yeah.
just it slips from being a dramatic to almost a comedic performance. I feel in like the best possible way because that is the reaction one would have waking up
Yeah.
in that body at that moment. And the rest of you can decide when you go see the movie starting on Friday. Unless you live in Australia, then you have to wait another month and a half.
Yeah.
Other questions? We have time for probably one or two more. Yes, sir.
So A has this kind of credo that they try to make as little impact in the lives of the person that they're in as possible. And I'm wondering whether that was to like a characterizing detail, whether it's something you thought, this is what I would do in that situation, and for either of you, whether you think you'd be able to hold with that.
All right, so the question is, A is a moral person who tries to stay by the rules and tries not to mess up the lives that A is in. And so the question was, again, how was that to write? And then to either of us, do we feel that if we were in that position, we could follow those rules? I mean, I think for me, I think it is the most important part of A's character, that you know right away that A has really been responsible. But I also think through the course of the book, A starts to actually make mistakes because of love. And I think that is something hopefully relatable to everybody, that sometimes when you're on your own and you're just isolated and not connecting with anybody else, it's very easy to follow the rules because you have no stakes in anything else. But then once A is really falling for Rhiannon and trying to be in her world, that is when A, not necessarily with any malice whatsoever, is starting to make more leaps and starting to be spontaneous and realizing that sometimes spontaneity and rule following isn't quite the same. Do you have?
Oh my God. What?
Do you think? All right, so I'm gonna throw out the second part of the. So do you think if you had to be A, could you follow the rules?
Such a rule breaker. No, I don't know. I mean, everyone would like to say they're a good person,
Right.
but I mean, I don't really know. I think it would be like, especially when you're young, it would be so easy to think, oh my God, I could just, walk in to this shop and just rob it and nothing would happen to me the day after. But I do think, it would hurt you in a way because you'd end up feeling lonely.
Mhm.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I feel that I would try, but I'd probably mess up. But again, I wouldn't take advantage. And the sequel, someday coming out in October, is very much the character who's not really in the movie, but is in the book, who's inside Reverend Poole's body, is somebody who does take advantage, and it's about the contrast between that. What's funny is it really, because I was writing so much from A's point of view, all the things you could get away with, it didn't even occur to me, like, yes, that you could totally rob a store, and then the next day you'd be like, hey, I'm in a different body, I have an alibi. And it was only when I was writing from the point of view of the person who's in Evergreen Pool that I was like, oh, wow, I could really, abuse this considerably. All right, any last questions? All right, we have two more. Judy, we'll start with you.
You've been talking about the book in terms of emotion, and I'm wondering, when you were writing it, did you think of the political implications in terms of gender and sexuality, or does the politics of it, was it more thrust upon you?
All right, so the question is, when writing the book, was I aware of sort of the political implications of what A does, especially in terms of gender and race? And the answer is yes. I mean, I didn't, as usually with my writing, I was certainly thinking of it in terms of identity, but knew that some identities people certainly have some political views upon. So I wasn't writing it to be political, but I knew that writing about it would de facto be political. And so certainly it's been interesting because over the course of the past 6 years, culture has changed, and especially talking to high schoolers and college students about issues like gender has changed. That I would do a high school visit shortly after the book came out, and I would talk about non-binary gender or being agendered, and I would mostly get blank looks and would have to explain it to the students, and certainly explain it to their teachers and whoever else was there. But as time has gone by, I've found that the students, for whatever reason, Facebook Dropbox, internet culture, whatever it is, they're much more savvy about the notion of non-binary gender or non-binary anything, and so are very open to those conversations. Some of the teachers are as well, some of the teachers not as much. But I do think that it very much was about that. It's interesting because when the book first came out, everybody said it was very much about a trans story, and I didn't really correct that because I felt that there was something empowering, and certainly trans readers were finding something about the theme of not being defined by your body. But now I'm very careful to point out that A is actually not trans, A is agendered, and is non-binary, because there is a difference between the two, which again, even 6 years ago, I don't think the distinction was being made quite as much. Finally, I will say, well, and the third book, Someday, is much more consciously political because it is about the moral choices we make and about whether you take advantage of your power or whether you give away your power to people who need it. That seems to resonate right now. All right, you had a question.
I'm a high school English teacher.
Excellent.
And I wanted to know if there was a book that either of you read that taught you empathy or that you felt that. Because as teachers of English, we start to feel that students aren't reading as much anymore. They're on the phone. And one of the big things is that books teach you empathy. So I was just wondering if there was a book.
I'll take it first if you want to think about it. I mean, it's funny because you said that. I mean, the first thing that popped to mind, going first thought, best thought, I mean, the most explicitly about empathy book I know of is Kate DiCamillo's Tale of Despero. I mean, the character even discovers the word empathy and talks about it. And so whenever I think about teaching empathy, again, that's younger, it's not YA, but I think that that's what I think of. But I think most YA actually does teach empathy because it is about figuring out who the other people in your lives are or figuring out who you are. And I think empathy is really ingrained in that. How about you?
Oh my God, that's a tough question. Yeah. My first thought was I actually studied To Kill a Mockingbird at school a couple of years ago, and you know, that was, of course, when you study it, you look at the themes, and you know, a huge theme was empathy, and I think Atticus talks about, you know, stepping into someone's skin. So I think that was when I learnt about it in terms of, you know, looking at a story and looking at novels. And yeah, that's the main one that comes to mind, I guess, is To Kill a Mockingbird.
All right, any last burning question before we go to the signing? All right, then we will go to the signing. Thank you to the Strand for having us. And we, again, encourage you on Friday, please go see this movie. Please. Tell all your friends to see this movie. Don't ask Angourie to come see it with you because she'll have had her fill by then. I may have as well. But again, we hope you enjoy it.